Today we're going to run you through the topic inverter market share. There's a similar story for panel market share. This analysis is useful for understanding trends in uptake of, in particular, inverters, and is useful to understand, well, is my strategy working? Which are the top leading manufacturers, and are they being substituted for by other manufacturers, for example? This topic is an extension available as an upgrade to the Luminate service. And you'll find it in this menu system, topics, manufacturers, if you have access to it. Now, this first chart shows in one form the market share of individual manufacturers, which is repeated in another bar chart form for you there. This is the most recent month. We then have a look at the rolling 3-month window to see if there's been any significant shifts in inverter market share, and then having a look at this on a quarterly basis to see what has occurred as well. And you can see, for example, benefits of interactivity is you can see individual data points coming out to see what's been trending recently. Now, if we look at and group these inverters to see what's happening at a class level, then you can see, for example, leading Chinese inverters starting to gain market share and drawing that largely away from European inverters, for example. Breaking that out into a rolling 12-month period, which has got the best market share, and acknowledging that there are variations up and down. When you look at a 12-month period, where does that get you to? And we can also then go and see, well, how does that market share vary by system size range? And do particular inverters or panels have greater strengths in particular areas? We also do some analysis at a state level to identify, for example, that SunGrow in the last 12 months has done particularly well in Queensland and is ranked #1 there, whereas Fronius, for example, was #1 in the Northern Territory. So useful to understand particular strengths and weaknesses across the country. And then there's some metadata for you. There is another data story here on inverters, which I will continue to have a look at for you. And that is looking at a particular inverter. So in this topic, we break this down to understand for a particular inverter, and you can have a look at a range of different inverters if you've got an interactive license to see where is its greatest strengths and weaknesses. So for example, Fronius has a much greater market share in the Northern Territory than it does in Western Australia or Queensland, for example. You can also see where their strength is, and it's more so in that mid-range compared to the rest of the market. So this says for the particularly selected inverter, what's their distribution of market share across those different market segments, and how does that compare to the rest of the inverters across the country? And so you can see that Fronius has a leading market share in that mid-residential size segment. This chart will tell you, for all of the retailers that use Fronius or whichever selected, in this case it's Fronius, use Fronius in their portfolio, what other inverters were they using and how has the dynamic changed? And so installers that were using Fronius used less Fronius over the recent period and used more SunGrow. So that would tend to suggest that people are substituting SunGrow for Fronius as an example. This next chart here will show you an understanding of the share of wallet for particular inverter manufacturers. And each of these data points represents a particular retailer, which we never disclose who they are, but it can tell you which of your retailers are you getting a lot of volume, a lot of share of wallet, and you might find many, many small retailers using 100% your product, versus those retailers at the other end of the spectrum that are using your product very, very infrequently. And so this scale here shows you the larger retailers at the top and smaller retailers at the bottom. And so, for example, this retailer here does a lot of volume but uses very little of your product. And if you compare that to this retailer, which does a significant amount of volume and uses almost exclusively your product. And then there are people in between. So this can help you with your strategy and understanding your loyalty analysis as well. It's a Pareto chart where you can come and say, well, X% of your, it's actually an 80-20 rule for this brand, Fronius. So 80% of your products coming from 20% of your customers. Now, the next thing here is customers, your retailers that are using Fronius, overall, what is the breakdown therefore of the rest of the equipment that they're using? And so that gives you some idea of the relative amount of products that are used in portfolios that you include Fronius. This chart here is useful for understanding your who you could partner with on marketing partnerships, for example. So Trina Solar is the most coupled with Fronius in this case, and it's coupled far more than it is in for the rest of the market. So hey, there's a natural synergy there. Do you come together and form some kind of marketing partnership? In contrast, for example, REC Solar is used, but that's a similar sort of analysis quite commonly with your inverter and far less commonly out there in the market. If you contrast that with, for example, Yingli, which is used very infrequently with your inverter and also very infrequently with other markets. But for example, Risen is used particularly across other inverters and not so much yours. So understanding who you're coupled with. We also have some other analyses which can identify for you switching behavior, loyalty, customer loyalty metrics, etc. They are covered in a special feature in depth, and we actually have a video running through that already. I will point you to that there, and if you search in here inverter loyalty metrics, you'll get an example of that. This topic should be available to you very shortly. This and with explanation here that shows you the share of wallet and how that's distributed by retailer to see which of the inverters which occupy a large amount of the wallet of the retailers that they that use it, and how's that compare for your inverter versus other inverters. Noting again, if I'm saying inverters, it could be panels as well. And then we've also got some analytics on customer acquisition and churn. And so to what degree are the customers that are buying from you repeat customers versus new customers versus customers that have lapsed. I hope that's been very useful. And I think you can also see that interactivity is useful here. In fact, I'm going to come and show you this one thing that you get. Each company that subscribes to this gets a interactive license. And let me pull this one up. I'll find that for you in just a sec. Okay, I found it for you in that same topic. This is MV Inverters Personalization Full. And so if you've got the interactive license in your company, this is where you can come and see those charts, which I ran through for you, but interactive. So you can come and change the inverter manufacturer and see how these charts update. The benefit of doing that is that then you can quickly run and understand the different manufacturers and what their strengths and weaknesses are, for example. And now we've seen GoodWe and similar charts that you will have seen in your other, earlier parts of the recording. We hope you found it very useful.